There is so much incredible food in DC, it can be overwhelming, especially with new spots popping up on what seems like a daily basis. Sometimes I find myself eating at the same places over and over just because I can't decide what new place to try. But this March, there's no better reason to get out there and check some places off the list. It's District Bridges' Tour del Taco. From March 1st to 31st, try as many of DC's best tacos and pupusas as you can to be crowned DC's taconnoisseur. With each taco, you'll earn points to climb the Tour del Taco leaderboard for a chance to win prizes, gift cards, and experiences. You can even give back to the community with the Have a Taco, Give a Taco fundraiser and help cover the cost of a hot meal to a neighbor in need. Visit districtbridges.org/Tour del Taco DC to see the taco map, track your progress, and vote for your favorite taco in the city. Today on CityCast DC.
A lot of our fellow Washingtonians are in shock, angry. They are anxious about their futures and how they're going to take care of their families. And I want them to know that DC government is going to do all that we can to help in their transition.
That was Mayor Muriel Bowser kicking off an unprecedented town hall yesterday with citizens of a city that is reeling from the first 6 weeks of the Trump presidency. NBC4's Mark Segraves was there, and he's here to tell us about it. Today is Thursday, March 6th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me.
So you were at the mayor's town hall yesterday. In the past few months, we have mostly heard Bowser speak about the Trump administration in a kind of conciliatory tone. Talk to me about her tone during this town hall.
Yeah, well, look, she is not the same defiant mayor that we had in 2020 who painted Black Lives Matter on the street in front of the White House. And she's been very candid about that she has got to walk a fine line and that she's not going to criticize the president every time he does something. That said, today every time she inches a little bit further toward pushing back and expressing some of her concerns about some of the moves the Trump administration is taking that directly impact Washington, D.C. And you heard that today when she was talking about the moves with the federal employees and how it's impacting the district's economy and its ability to provide services for D.C. residents.
You had asked her during this town hall how she'd respond to the concern that she hasn't been pushing back enough. What'd she say?
Yeah, she said,
Mark, I think residents trust my judgment, and they know that I have led the city through some difficult times, some good times, and some difficult times. They know that I've worked with this president. They know that we have had issues, and they know that I'm going to fight for what's important for the city.
She appreciates people's frustration, but now is not the time for that. She said that the district residents trust her, that she has a good relationship with the president, and people, the residents, the press, were not privy to those private conversations that go on between the White House and the mayor, and that she's in the best position to navigate these waters with a president who she worked with for 4 years in his first term. And so, she again, didn't take the bait, if you will, of trying to pick a fight with the president and defended the moves or lack thereof I even kind of framed it in what we saw the other night at the joint session where you had, members of Congress either being escorted out for interrupting the president or leaving voluntarily in protest of what the president was saying, and I asked her, why we're not seeing that type of reaction from her, or what she would say to people who are frustrated that we're not seeing it. And, she once again defended the way she's playing it.
And this includes being willing to paint over Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, her exact quote to defending that was,
We have bigger fish to fry than fights over what has been very important to us and to their history, and especially in our ability to keep our city safe during that time. That mural played a very important part. But now our focus is on making sure our residents and our economy survives.
And she started talking about, again, the economy, about Medicaid, about her words, the threat the district is facing right now is different than the threat we faced in 2020 during his first term. And she's just trying to protect the 700,000 residents of D.C. against an economy that could collapse because of his moves.
My biggest concern now is not decimating the federal workforce. And I'm not just talking about employees, though I'm certainly concerned about them, but the disruption to services that go along with it. We run a government of 700,000 people. We have to switch gears from a budget that was already almost done to redoing it and reducing services on the fly, or reducing spending at least on the fly. That's a huge distraction that would be better spent on our joint priorities.
While she didn't talk about the possibility of federal takeover, she did mention, D.C.'s not a state, doesn't have the power that a governor and a state would have, and so is vulnerable to the whims of a president in a way that no other jurisdiction is.
One of those threats to D.C. was this executive order that Trump was putting together that was really going to bite on home rule and autonomy. And then that's apparently been pulled back, or it's going to be made more focused and related to federal properties. One of the other folks in the room asked the mayor, why does she trust that Trump is actually going to back off that executive order? What'd she say?
She cautioned her answer by saying it could change any day. She was really asked, does she trust the president of the United States? And she said yes, but that could change any day. And she, again, when we first had the Washington Post reporting about the possibility of an executive order, when the mayor finally spoke in public about it, and I asked her directly, she acknowledged she had been briefed by the White House about it. So we know an executive order existed and was being floated by the White House, and that the mayor had been briefed by the White House about what could be in that executive order. Then we expected it to be dropped, and then it wasn't, and we got further and further away. And about a week ago, the mayor said she doesn't even know if it exists. And then today she said that she believes that it has been put on hold, and largely because of her negotiations with the White House around things. She acknowledged the reason she changed is she is willing to paint over Black Lives Matter Plaza is because the White House expressed that they didn't like it. And so she was willing to make that concession to the White House to in effect stave off an executive order, or possibly worse. There's a lot worse things looming out there for DC than just an executive order that would talk about graffiti and crime, public safety enforcement.
Ever wondered why mosquitoes bite you? Or maybe you're curious about policy, like solving the housing shortage or bridging the digital divide. Or maybe you want to hear it all. After the Fact, a podcast by Pew, breaks down today's big issues with expert insights and real stories. Whether you're into the research or the personal stories behind it, we've got you covered. Get the stories behind the stats. Listen to After the Fact wherever you get your podcasts.
CityCast is made possible by the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University, celebrating 1 year of performances at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg Center, located at 555 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. This spring, immerse yourself in the vibrant offerings at DC's newest venue for music and dance, featuring a full season of free performances. Experience a dynamic range of events, including orchestral, jazz, and chamber music, all presented by esteemed Peabody faculty, students, alumni, and special guests. Highlights of the season include the Super Collider Symposium from March 13th to March 15th, a symposium on algorithmic composition tools bringing together more than 50 leading researchers for presentations of art and science-based creative work, and Load Bang on April 30th, a New York City-based new music chamber ensemble performing works by Peabody composition faculty, including Guggenheim Fellows and Pulitzer Prize finalists. While all events are free, tickets are required for entry. Explore the full performance schedule, find out more details, and reserve your tickets at washingtondc.jhu.edu. So let's talk about these bigger fish. There's been so much news coming down the pike in the last 6-7 weeks. So many things impacting the DC community. Based on what you heard from the mayor, what's her biggest concern right now?
Medicaid. I mean, clearly she sounded the alarm, and this is not the first time she brought it up, but she definitely sounded the alarm on Medicaid and what that could mean if there were substantial, DC is reliant upon the federal reimbursement of Medicaid like no other jurisdiction, again. And so she talked about just the impact to providing services to those most vulnerable residents who rely on that. And so that was one of the things that she spoke specifically about. She talked in general about just, the cost of living going up, about services to veterans not being available like they should.
Can I stop you on Medicaid for a second? Did she say anything about what she is planning to do or how they would respond if this money went away? What that would mean for how the city allocates its money?
No, she did not. She talked about what could happen, what could be lost, but not how the district government could possibly step in. And, when you start talking Medicaid, you're talking big numbers, big dollars, a lot of money at a time when they're already facing $1 billion deficit over the next 3.5 years. So it could be crushing to the district to have to deal with that. And she did not indicate that they have a plan to deal with it right now. To her defense, I would say we did not ask her if she had a plan. It's a good question that we should have asked. That was not put to the mayor, but she certainly did not offer one.
She did talk about a little bit of places where there's money that's going to be spent in terms of what services the city would offer federal workers who've lost jobs.
She did. They've created a website for federal workers where they can go and either look for help finding a job, help applying for unemployment, help with things like student loans, with getting their kids into school, with health insurance, all of this located in one place. And she did leave open the possibility that she would ask the federal government for some type of payment to help with these costs. She reporter asked her that question. She said, perhaps. When the reporter followed up for specifics, she declined to provide any specifics, but opened the door to the possibility that there would be some kind of ask for federal funding to help offset what the district is going to incur as a result of these cuts to the federal workforce and, the selling off of all these properties and everything else that is happening that's impacting DC.
For regular folks, where can they find these resources? What is the site she mentioned?
fedsupport.dc.gov.
And one of the things on there is foreclosure prevention too. What does that look like?
Yes, they have counselors. That was one of the things that they actually said that they've been very successful with prior to the federal layoffs, just having this office that has counselors at the ready that you can call up. They will look at your specific case. They will walk you through it, and they will help you to put off foreclosure. And the city administrator cited 300 foreclosures that had been avoided since they opened this hotline that is available to DC residents, not just federal employees. A lot of this support is available to any DC resident, but they're kind of putting everything in one place for federal workers. And there is some stuff like they're having a job fair specifically catered to federal workers that's only open to federal workers. So there will be some stuff that is only for federal workers, but there will also be services there that are available to any DC resident.
I'm wondering if in your reporting you've spoken with any laid-off workers about this and whether these sorts of things match what they say they need right now.
You could tell from the calls that came in. So the mayor took calls for about 20 minutes from DC residents, most of them federal workers. And you could tell that their biggest concern was filing for unemployment insurance. And there are still a lot of questions. The director of the Department of Employment Services, who was there today, I have been asking her for weeks, and she's been trying to keep us up to speed on this process and who actually qualifies. And today, she was still unable to say with any specificity if you took the deferred termination deal that people are calling a buyout. If you availed yourself of that and are leaving voluntarily, she was unable to say whether you qualify for unemployment insurance because you left voluntarily.
There was also a thing about this unemployment website where they were touting how easy it is, but I've heard the opposite from people trying to file right now, and at least one of the callers also talked about that.
She suggested that it should take you about 45 minutes to an hour to do the process online. There were several callers who said, well, I've done the process and now, I haven't heard back. And she acknowledged that there may be some delays, that people aren't hearing back as quickly as they would like, either the residents or as she would like her staff to reply. But, we went through this during COVID, the same exact kind of exercise where there was a flood of applications for unemployment. This time they say they're better prepared. They have a better website. They've done this before during COVID, and so they hope that it gets easier. But again, advised if you had applied and it has been weeks since you've heard back, you should call in to the DC Office of Employment Services to get an update from a counselor.
It's a big picture between the job losses, the potential Medicaid loss. She is acknowledging the city's expecting to lose hundreds of millions of dollars out of its budget in the next few years. What was she pushing in terms of how the city stays above water?
So she is very non-committal about what she would cut as far as any kind of services, programs, unlike Chairman Mendelson, who said in no uncertain terms raising taxes is off the table for him. She would not rule anything off the table when it came to filling these budget gaps. She did say, and again, this is kind of links back to RFK, right, and bringing the commanders here, that she is not backing down from investing, and again, and double down on the need to invest public funds in the RFK development, whether there's a stadium there or not, and pointing to the fact, in her words, that they need to invest in industries that will grow, that will create jobs.
Surely she doesn't mean football, like concession, parking, stuff like that. What sectors is she talking about?
She didn't, again, specify. She did talk about getting into the realm of internet and tech work, but again, with no specificity. But she did, again, both at this and then a couple of days ago at her press conference, say this was no reason to step back from investing in big projects, and big projects create jobs, she says, and that's why she wants to go forward with RFK. They've got a couple of other big projects. They're supposed to be building a new jail. So there are projects in the works that they want to keep moving forward with.
So one thing that's got to be sort of bittersweet for the city economic development people is this Trump administration plan to get rid of, deaccession a bunch of federal property in D.C. They published a list earlier this week. It included like the HUD building, the Justice Department, the Labor Department, and then the D.C. stuff quietly disappeared from the list. But I say bittersweet because, we have heard from city officials that there's this great upside where these buildings could be turned from the government into the private sector that would then have to pay taxes on them, and that would be good for the city economy. But it sounds like at this town hall, they were also discussed as like a potential massive economic loss for the city. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised because, like you just painted, for months, for more than a year. Back into the Biden administration, the mayor has been calling on the federal government, hey, either send your employees back to work or let go of these buildings and let us develop these buildings to something that can create jobs and a tax base and whatnot. And so while the mayor acknowledged this is an opportunity for that, she said the way the government is doing and that she would directly ask the president to pull back on this because, in her words, you can't dump all this property on the market at once without a plan.
They've talked about consolidating buildings. That list I saw was outrageous. And I just don't know how you can function as a centralized federal bureaucracy without the Department of Justice and the FBI working. I just don't know how you do that, and we wouldn't recommend that.
And she talked about still needing a centralized government in Washington, D.C., needing a Department of Justice, needing the FBI to be located, in or around D.C. Of course, she's wanted that FBI building to be on the public market, for years. She's wanted to open up that space on Pennsylvania Avenue. But she said doing it all at once is what was problematic without a plan to flood the market with all of this real estate. Just would not be good for DC. So she said specifically she was going to ask the president to pull back on that. But she said the original list that you pointed to that's been subsequently taken down, she called that outrageous.
It is weird that Trump, the real estate guy, is about to get rid of all this property at like the worst possible time to try to move office property.
Well, worst possible time to sell, but maybe not the worst possible time to buy, right? So whose interest is he serving with that? We'll have to see who actually ends up buying the property if it goes that route.
Wait, so do the mayor have any words of advice or support for either for laid off workers or just those of us who are just worried about DC's future generally?
She did again say that there is an unnecessary stress on the people of Washington, D.C. and the country, but specifically D.C. with all these federal layoffs. She hearkened back to Elon Musk's appearance at CPAC, and she said, you can't take a chainsaw to it. That's no way to go about doing this, and that it just creates unnecessary stress, both on residents and on businesses and people wanting to do business with DC. Look, how is the city going to borrow money to build a stadium, if that's the route they're going to go, if they're bringing in less revenue than projected for the first time in many years, already at their borrowing cap by law, and then the threat of a federal takeover, lenders not really knowing who's going to be in charge. I mean, it was just a few days ago, you had the president of the United States on Air Force One telling reporters the federal government should take over Washington, D.C. He'd said that on the campaign trail, but now he is saying it as the president. And as the mayor said today, that threat constantly hangs over her and every D.C. resident.
So, Mark, you are a City Hall reporter, and this obviously is like the biggest story maybe of your career, biggest story in a long time. How do people follow your reporting if they want to watch you talk about the big changes coming DC's way?
Thanks, Mike. I'm on every evening, 4, 5, and 6 on NBC Washington, so you can catch us there. You can catch us online at NBCWashington.com. And then I still use my social media account, formerly known as Twitter, for breaking news. And so that's where you'll find us, and we'll stay on the front line of this as long as we can.
We'll come back and tell us about it sometime.
Yeah, I hope to.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. I hope this conversation was helpful for the many laid off federal workers in the DMV. If you know someone affected, please share this episode with them. And let us know if you have questions we didn't answer. You can email us at dc@citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.